In this lesson, we'll dig deeper into Turbo Streams by adding a new feature to our app, User Reviews. Like we saw in a previous lesson on lazy loading Turbo Frames, we will display user reviews below the product description. But instead of some hard-coded text, we'll add a new review model and allow logged-in users to post actual reviews. We'll use Turbo Streams to instantly prepend new reviews to the list of reviews. Let's start by using the Rails scaffold generator to create the model, controller, routes, and views for reviews. So let's run bin Rails generate, or just G, scaffold review. And let's add only the fields that we strictly need. We'll need a body of type text. This will be the main text of the review. Apart from that, we just need to link the review model to the user and product models. A review will be written by a user, and it will be for a specific product. So let's say user references and product references. And that will generate all the files we need, including this migration. So let's run Rails DB migrate. Now let's go ahead and define the relationships between the three models. First, in the product model, let's add has many reviews, and we'll also say dependent destroy. And we need the same in the user model, so I'll just copy and paste that same line in here. And finally, in the new review model, the generator automatically added the relationships here. So we have belongs to user and belongs to product. Now let's update the product show page. I'm going to paste in some HTML for the structure of the reviews. So we have a reviews container div, a reviews heading, and if a user is signed in, we'll display a form for adding a review. We won't show this form to users who are not signed in. And below that, we'll display existing reviews in a Turbo Frame tag with ID reviews. So let's refresh, and you can see the structure in the browser. Let's start by adding the code for displaying existing reviews. So let's replace this comment with render reviews. The scaffold generator has already created the partial for displaying reviews. We just need to define this variable in the product's controller, show action. So let's go ahead and do that now. So here in the show action definition, we can say reviews equals product.reviews. And let's display them in reverse chronological order. So we'll show the newest reviews first. So we can say .order created at desk. That means in descending order of their created at value. We don't have any reviews yet. So if we refresh again, we still won't see any reviews. So let's go ahead and add the form for adding reviews. Again, the form has already been generated by the scaffold generator. So let's take a look at that. We can use that form here. So we'll say render partial reviews / form. And we need to pass it a local variable called review. So let's say locals review, and we'll use a new instance variable called new review. Let's define that in the controller. So back here in the show action, let's say new review equals product.reviews.new user ID current user &.id. So we're saying we're creating a new review for this chosen product, and we're using the safe navigation operator & here. So if a user is signed in and current user is not nil, then we'll get that user's ID, otherwise it'll be nil. Okay, now back in the browser. Let's refresh it. And there's our review form. In addition to the review body, it currently also shows fields for the user ID and product ID. We don't want to show those, so let's remove them. Let's remove this label, and let's get rid of this user ID field. We don't want users to be able to submit a user ID because they could submit any ID. We'll use the user ID of the signed-in user in the backend. Now for the product ID, we do need it because we want to associate the review with this product, but we don't need to display it to the user. So let's remove this label, and let's change this field from a text field to a hidden field. We don't need all these classes for a hidden field. Okay, now let's test the form by creating a review. Note, while we are building this feature, we're doing some things that you wouldn't want to do in a production e-commerce app. That is, we are letting a seller, in this case the user with my email ID, rishimittal@gmail.com, write reviews for their own products. Obviously, you don't want that to happen. Plus, normally you wouldn't allow more than one review per customer per product. So we can look at adding these restrictions as a further exercise. But for now, our goal is to learn about Turbo. So let's keep going. So let's fill in the body and submit it. And we get an error. User must exist. Yeah, so this is happening because we're not specifying a user in the create action of the reviews controller. So let's fix that. So here in the reviews controller, in the create action, instead of review.new, we need to say current user.reviews.new. And we need to make sure the user is signed in before calling that. So let's add a before action filter at the top. Before action authenticate user. And we only want that for the create, edit, update, and destroy actions. So if a user is not signed in, they should not be able to do these actions. All right, let's refresh and try once again. Fill in a review and submit. And this time it worked. But notice we got redirected to the new reviews show page. Obviously, we don't want that. Instead, we want to stay on the product page and simply display the newly added review in the review section without reloading the page. And this is where we come back to Turbo Frames. Now, if we go back to the product page and refresh it, we will see the new review here. Before we switch the form to use Turbo Frames, let's clean up the display of the reviews. Let's open the review partial and remove the bits of text we don't want. We can basically remove everything except for the body of the review. I've also converted it to a block code with some Tailwind classes for styling. Now refresh, and there, it looks a lot neater. Okay, now let's turn to Turbo Frames. If we look at the create action, note that currently in the respond to block, we are only handling two formats, HTML and JSON. So when we submit the form, the response comes back as HTML. We can switch to Turbo by adding a new format, format.turbostream. And then we need to specify what to render. So we say render TurboStream, TurboStream.prepend, which is one of the 8 actions we looked at earlier. And here we have to pass 2 arguments, where we want to prepend data on the page and what we want to prepend. We want to prepend the new review in the Turbo frame with ID reviews, comma, and we want to prepend the new review. So just review. We're using prepend here because we want the newest reviews to appear at the top. Okay, now let's refresh and see if this works. Type in a new review and submit. And there you go. The new review instantly gets added to the top. Now we've written the TurboStream action in the controller, but Rails also allows you to do it in a TurboStream template. Let me show you. We can move this prepend call to a new view file under reviews called create.turbostream.erb. This is similar to the classic JavaScript template files with .js.erb extensions. Let's save it under app views reviews. And let's paste in the TurboStream prepend call here. And we can remove this block and just say format.turbostream in the controller action. Okay, now let's refresh again and test this. I also have the network tab open. I'll write some new review text and submit, and it still works fine. The review got added to the top. Let's look at the network request. And the response is a TurboStream element containing the new review. It has 2 attributes, action equals prepend and target equals reviews. That's the frame ID we specified in the call to the prepend action. And it wraps the review markup inside a template element. One last thing, let's try another different action. Instead of prepending, let's append the new review to the reviews frame. Now when we add a new review, it gets added to the bottom of the frame. Feel free to try out the other actions. But for now, Let's change this back to prepend.